Welcome to the popular resort village in the Swiss Alps, St.Moritz, Switzerland, as we get ready for the Yeager Luge World Cup men's singles competition. On a warm day, with the sun peeking in and out, St.Moritz known for hosting all sorts of sports competitions, from sailing regattas to snow polo, and of course the mainstream sport of World Cup Luge. Here's a look at the natural track, built each year in November, carved into the mountainside, sliding from one village into another, St.Moritz into Celerina. Now to give you a ride, a first-hand tour of the St. Moritz track, I'm pleased to introduce my co-commentator, silver medalist at the Olympic Games, Gordy Shear. Gordy, take us from the top.
Oh, what a beautiful track this is. Natural ice, very smooth, expertise building this course. The guys who make these things are artists. And really, this is, the upper portion is all about gliding little gentle corners, nothing major, up until your first major 180-degree corner, which is sunny. And it's really all about trying to get kind of early onto the corners, as we say, to use the early part of the profile and let the sled run as much as possible. This is a high-speed course. Aerodynamics are very important. This is the Horseshoe corner, very famous in the world of sliding sports. Now this is another series of sort of more gentle corners, and down at the bottom here we really start to pick up speed with 4 right-hand corners, the final of which is called Gunter Sachs, and the world just drops right out from underneath you. You go open into the field, followed by 2 left-hand corners, Martinau and Portigo, your finish curves, and here we are across the finish line.
All with such a spectacular backdrop of mountains and usually blue sky. 32 racers in today's competition. The first 17 qualified yesterday in the Nations Cup one-heat qualifying race. They will count them down to Max Langenhan. Keep an eye on Felix Locke, number 30. He has nothing to race for except another victory. He clinched the World Cup a couple of weeks ago. Well, with all of the celebration of this season, it's also a somber moment in the world of luge, as last night Josef Sepp Bentz passed away at the age of 77. Sepp Bentz was an athlete for the Swiss national team for years, an Olympic medalist, and so instrumental not just in bobsleigh but in international luge. The international sliding sports community mourns the loss while at the same time celebrating the great life of a true legend in this sport, Sepp Bentz. Getting set now for the start of run number 1 of the men's singles competition, the 9th and final World Cup race of this abridged season. Not really abridged, but very much compacted season, Gordy.
Yeah, really just a tremendously stressful season in terms of all the testing that was involved and all of the travel and competing at a different schedule, visiting a few tracks multiple times.
Josef Ninnis pushing his way towards what he hopes will be a 5th Olympic appearance next year in Beijing. Ninnis will be 40 years old if he makes it onto that Olympic team. He's in pretty good shape. Slovakia, not a lot of athletes performing better than Josef week in and week out.
You can really see in that opening shot, after Ninnis took his paddles, settled into his sled, the long run into the 2 kink corners, Here we are into the Horseshoe, followed by telephone corner.
It's remarkable, Gordy, how much more speed they're carrying in the Horseshoe compared to the doubles earlier today.
Yeah, it really is a different track starting from the top. Some of the doubles athletes were not thrilled about going from such a low point on the hill.
No, doubles and women that I spoke with, they just really don't think there's any reason for that at all. 108.482 as Katerina Simonakova shows her approval down in the teammate section. 30-degree day. Sun, as I mentioned, peeking through on occasion, and that can really play differences on the track. But as we touched on earlier, those differences on this natural track are sometimes reverse effect of what we would see on an artificial track.
Yeah, I think I'm done trying to predict conditions on this track. I just don't have a good enough understanding of what happens to this thing in the sun, what happens to it in terms of frost and all those kinds of things. So we'll just have to see what happens on the clock. But what a, really such an unusual track. It's so quiet. All you hear is, generally speaking, a lot less sled vibrations and much, particularly down as you get towards the bottom, where it seems to be super smooth.
Now the Nash-Dixon section heading into Horseshoe. Speed.
Yeah, sorry, Tim.
Yeah,
definitely some G's in that Horseshoe corner.
Oh, yeah, don't they feel it? As I said, the difference in speed is about 8-9 miles per hour faster than the doubles earlier today. And
yeah,
now down here at the bottom, trailing Ninnis by quite a bit, is Mikhail Lešik of Czech Republic.
Sorry, Tim. But yeah, I mean, 8 or 9 miles an hour in terms of driving and physics, it's like two different worlds.
109.281. The track record was set by Andy Langenhan, and that was the last time the World Cup was held here. Andy won that race with a 106.130 for one of his heats. But again, this is a changeable track. It follows the same line, but not every exact little nuance. So I know in the IBSF races, skeleton and bobsleigh, no track record lasts more than that season. Everything is a season record. For whatever reason, the luge track record holds. And at least, Gordy, compared to the doubles earlier today, this men's start is in a roughly similar location that it's always been.
Similar, but yeah, I'm surprised they kept the track record because there's only one corner on this track that's actually fixed, and that's Horseshoe.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest, it's just, using the same lines of sight. And I'm sure they've probably advanced to, things like, perhaps they've advanced to things like GPS, I don't know. But, it's definitely a slightly different course every year. There's no way around it.
Through Sunny, Nash, and Dixon, and now around the just mentioned Horseshoe curve, one of the most famous curves in all of sliding sports around the world. Trailing Ninnis. Josef must have had a bad race yesterday, because for him to be the first to start out of 32, it's a little surprising for a guy that began the season among the seeded group.
I would agree, and definitely a little bit offline here from telephone onward. Not getting, sometimes a little too early into some of the curves, late in some of the others, just offline.
Well, his 3/4 of a second back is good enough for second place. Teodor Turia, the first of the Romanians. Vali Cretu still to come. Tomorrow, women's singles and team relay. Pretty quick pace, the early going here. Good to see Rupert Staudinger back in the field. Missed a couple of World Cup races, but for Great Britain, and it is apropos because this St.Moritz track, which of course has great German and Swiss tradition, nothing matches the tradition of the UK here with sliding in St.Moritz.
Yeah, it's the track, all of these corners are named as opposed to numbered, and you've got an interesting combination of English and some German names, some Italian-sounding names. Definitely reflects the international spirit of this. But, yeah, definitely the British have a real history here.
Especially next door at the Cresca Run. That's almost like British territory within Switzerland.
Indeed.
Rupert Staudinger from Berchtesgaden, Professor Luge. If you missed the World Cup races over the next 9 months and are hungry for some luge, watch his videos on YouTube educating you about the sport. As Rupert goes through Martineau with the shades now up and the finish curve. 108.859, a distant second place behind Josef Ninis of Slovakia.
I just love listening to the sleds pass through between Martineau and Portago, the last two corners on this course. Just nothing but wind noise, no ice chatter, just such smooth ice.
Now 19-year-old Mirza Nikolaev from Bosnia and Herzegovina. 20th place, or 8th place finisher rather, last year at the Junior European Championships. All sorts of titles at stake in a given season, Gordon. You've got the Worlds, the Europeans, the Junior Worlds, the Junior Europeans, the Under 23, the Nations Cup, the Sprint Cup, and the overall World Cup.
And then the World Cup and the overall World Cup. Yeah, there's certainly a handful of titles to win.
And then you have the Pan Pacific Championships.
Right.
Can we come up with a few more games within the game? Still early going here as Nikolaev makes it through Horseshoe cleanly. If you've got questions, comments, or insights, by all means, we'd love to hear from you, all of our viewers from around the world, on Twitter, @LugeAnnouncer. You can also email us, luge.announcer@gmail.
Exiting Gunter Sachs. Definitely the fastest point on the track. Just seems like the world drops from underneath you as you accelerate into an open field. Really, really cool feeling.
Great showing for this young Bosnian. In second place, Nikolaev. It's going to be fun to watch his development over the next couple of years, as is the case with the young woman, Tanitska, who's been doing great things.
Great history for this program. You know, it'd be nice to see them get their track in Sarajevo back.
Now Svante Koala. Let me look this up. I've been mentioning this. I think Svante qualified out of Nations Cup every week. Perfect record this year for Sweden. Yes, he was in every World Cup race, which is terrific.
I'd say that first kink one might be battling with curve one in Eagles for the smallest corner in the World Cup.
What about corner 0 in Winterberg?
Yeah, I'm not counting that.
Little dent, right?
Yeah, there's at least a radius. I mean, that's just such a corner 0 is real small.
Svante held the lead for the top half of this track. Now the 22-year-old from Lustero has fallen behind Ninis, but keeping it close still.
Definitely. Not out of it. With a good bottom here, you can drive a decent line through the final 4 right-handers plus the final 2 lefts and hold good position. You might be able to make it up.
84 miles per hour to the finish. Svante Kohala, he is in third place, 108.650. It is Slovakia, Bosnia, Sweden, Great Britain, and Romania. The top 5 in the standings early. Run number 1 from St.Moritz. Some say St. Moritz, some say San Moritz, some say Sankt Moritz. and that's apropos because there are a lot of languages spoken in this part of Switzerland. It's sort of the Romansh is the hybrid language, but you have Italian roots here, Swiss roots, German roots, even Portuguese, pretty big Portuguese population. Now Valley Cretu, veteran Romanian, 31 years old.
That's a long run. Between 106 and 108 has been the range that we've seen in training. And that's just a long ride.
Langenhan has yet to make it the top 20 in any race this year. That would be a great way to finish things off. He still holds a 1300s lead now, heading towards Horseshoe.
As you come out of Nash-Dixon, the sliders see that giant wall in front of them, which is Horseshoe. So
high. That's normally where you have all the spectators, not all of the spectators, but a huge gathering. There's a little wine and sausage bar right there as well.
Krejci was a little bit offline in some of the upper corners from telephone through Gunter Sachs, but he got it back online, but did lose some time.
Yeah, that caught up to him at the end as he sits in 4th place ahead of his teammate Toria, but well behind Josef Niniš. So the Slovakian was the first to go, put down a 108.482, and has held on to his spot over the next 7.
Yeah, you could just see him going late into one curve, followed by early, and he hit that right wall and got brushed down. Just slightly offline, but those mistakes cost you time.
Now Andre Manzi from the Ukraine. And we have a little correction that comes in, gets tweeted in. Christopher's writing in. He's a bobsled pilot. He's competed around the world. And Gordy, as we see you can't veer on the wide area.
No.
You got to stay straight. But Chris writes to say that the sunny corner here, which is not far before Horseshoe, is also a permanent fixture.
Oh.
That's built right in front of a little caretaker's cabin where the track workers warm up during the day, and some actually squat there at night, if I recall.
Wow. Well, thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that.
That's coming up right in a moment here. Oh, it just passed through Sunny, yeah.
Interesting to see that he's got such a lead. I don't think it's going to hold, but he's been consistently offline here. Losing time. Perhaps I'm wrong, but hearing a lot of foot tapping.
It's easier to hear on this course, and now skidding out of Gunter Sachs. This will likely turn red down here at the bottom, and it does. Yeah. A lot of time, it seems like, Gordy, they're losing a lot of time, but that's just for some reason, whatever. The clock takes a while, a little longer to catch up, it seems like, because he moved into the red earlier than that last corner.
Absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, the mistakes started early. I'm surprised it took so long for those mistakes to catch him, though. So I think he was carrying a decent amount of speed through the top.
Now Pavel Rapilov of Russia, and his world champion brothers coming up a little later on. Roman's never been on this track, but Pavel, of course, won silver last year at the Youth Olympics, and a couple of days ago Roman said that his brother Pavel will train me there. He was there for the youth races. I helped him all season long. Now he can help me.
Yeah, returning the favor. That's nice. I didn't hear much about track conditions during the Youth Olympic Games, but I would assume that they were superb, as they always generally seem to be here.
Yeah, I can't even think of many times ever people complain about this track. Big hit in the Dixon exit before Horseshoe.
Yeah, little problem exiting. I think his problem started exiting out of Sunny and just caught him in Nash-Dixon.
Well, the lead is still substantial, so these single sleds are set up a little better than the doubles for Russia earlier today, at least dealing with these conditions, but not when you have a pinball machine move like that. He's going to give it all away and more. Unfortunate for Pavel Rapilov, who once he lost it, Gordy, he lost it big time.
Yeah, he was just slightly offline, really, for the better part of this run. He was carrying a lot of speed because he had a decent start and a decent upper course. Exiting Gunter Sachs, just too much height in the end of the corner, and hit that right wall, and it was left wall, right wall from there, as you said, pinball machine.
Anton Dukas coming off of one of his best showings ever, a top 20 last week at the World Championships. He finished in 20th in that race, which equaled his best World Cup showing this season in Winterberg. Already a huge advantage at the start there over Ninnis, who gives away a lot at the start, but takes it back on the way down. Josef Ninnis, the first to go, still in first place.
That start ramp is really interesting because it's sort of slightly wider than normal, but it really opens up where the bob slot is. And if you have any direction, the good news is you're spared hitting the right or left walls that you might normally be if you drift off in one direction. But it also adds a lot of distance, so it's a mistake nonetheless. Perhaps slightly less costly, but definitely still it's going to hurt you.
Dukas in good shape to take over the lead now with a pretty big advantage, 0.2 of a second, as he dips down into the final few curves here out of Gunter Sachs and into Martineau.
I love that sled sound.
And opening it up, nice run, 108.208, the first place time. It was a good run for Josef Ninnis, who could still end up in the top 20 with a solid second run. Dukas really coming on this season, good to see.
It's exciting to see these guys develop their program as we watch Horseshoe in the exit.
Quick replays here in the early going. Maciej Sokovic. Now the bobsled start is not far from here in the skeleton start, but it's a lot flatter. So just where you see this come flat, keep in mind that the other sleds, they have this long flat area where it almost appears as if they're going in slow motion before they finally, at least the luge is slightly lower than that, and you've got the vertical happening right away.
Yeah, it's really very interesting to watch them slide through that first section. It's a lot of time to think and settle into your sled and just focus on your plan for the long run ahead of you.
24-year-old Sokovic taking over from his veteran former teammate Korawski, who's now coaching Poland among many other countries.
This is looking good so far.
1100s up. This is actually going to be tight. He'll need to keep it clean. That's one thing we've learned in the first day of competition here, that time gets taken away really quickly down at the bottom with the slightest of errors. And in the end, he hangs on by 14 thousandths.
Lost a little bit of time down at the final corner of Portigo. Maybe he got bumped off going slightly early into Martineau, which is the left-hander, just before the finish.
Celebration for Maciej Sokovic in his penultimate run of this season. Tucker West, the first of three from the United States. He's a three-time World Cup winner in his career, and about a 1 million time indoor start national champion, or so it seems.
Yeah, 7 consecutive titles for Tucker, which is a USA Luge record.
All right, 5 paddles and a quick settle and a good start time, 4.841. That's 300ths off of the start record, which was set by Tucker West, and that was yesterday.
Yeah, his starts have been not quite as fast this season, but I would also say that he's definitely made some strides forward in terms of his sliding. He's looked much more comfortable on the sled this year. A little bit early onto Dixon there.
Rough start of the season for Tucker West, who came to the first event after missing the first four with all of the North Americans. Showed up in Königssee and then did not qualify for that race out of Nations Cup. He's come back with some strong finishes. He was in the top 10 position at the World Championships after the first run.
Yeah, he struggled with consistency a little bit. We saw a slight mistake there from Tucker. But, you know, this season for the U.S. team has been, well, 5,000ths, kept it close. He has certainly a lot of time in his run, though.
5,000ths after the longest run he's had this year.
Yeah.
Here in St.Moritz.
I'm sure Tucker would have rather not made the mistake, but he also can take solace in knowing that he's got a lot of time in that run as well.
One cool thing about being in St.Moritz is it really does open up the door for a lot of other nations to be competitive, as evidenced earlier today by the young Latvian victory. And that, of course, will be the situation next year at the Olympic Games in China on a track that virtually no one has experience on.
Right.
Now the first of the Germans, Sebastian Bley, unfortunately did not qualify for the World Championships this year, although he did compete last year at the Worlds.
Yeah, really good luge position, a good clinic on what luge position is. Going into the snake section of its course. Head back, toes pointed. The toes are obviously the first thing that the wind comes into contact with, so it's very important to have those toes as pointed as possible. You're driving the sled with your shoulders and your feet, trying not to look too much. It's nice to see, but it also slows you down because it creates aerodynamic drag.
Sebastian out of the Thuringian program from Oberhof, Germany. He's actually from the city of Suhl, not far from Oberhof. He hits the finish line with a nice time of 1:07.821. The first of the Germans. So many different styles, so many different sizes, and so many different setups by all of these Germans.
Yeah, it's interesting that the development system that the German team has with their 4 different tracks, and, you know, almost serving as a farm system.
Grabbing the handles is American Chris Mazder. Earlier today, he finished 9th with teammate Jason Turdeman in the doubles event. Every weekend, Chris takes part in 3 of the 4 events: men's singles, doubles, and relay. Slow start time, as you were mentioning earlier today, Gordy. This is a guy that's come back from multiple shoulder surgeries.
Yeah, multiple shoulder surgeries in the past couple of years, plus an elbow surgery added to the list earlier in the preseason. So, you know, Chris is, in addition to trying to figure out his physical condition, also trying to figure out his sled setup as well.
Olympic silver medalist, who he's also finished as high as 3rd place in the overall World Cup standings. That was back in 2015, 2016. Bit of a little redirection there. I wasn't sure if it was a skid.
Little skid. I think I heard some ice being cut and definitely a foot tap as well.
The result is 3/10 back at that second to last speed split time. And that could even be more by the time he reaches the finish. Second place, so he found time down at the bottom.
Yep.
Even though the lead or the deficiency decreased, the placing got better. So it's Bley, Mazder, Sokovic, Vest, and Dukas. It's actually Vest pronounced West. Spent too much time doing these German names.
Almost really good run, but
Chris always gives the best
Who needs
summary
us,
of
right?
his runs.
Don't need our analysis when you got Chris to give it firsthand. Ryan Yeager, of course, unfortunately missed last week's World Championship, not qualifying on the very strong Austrian team, and probably was a good decision by Coach Rennie Friedel, because the rest of his Austrians competed pretty well, podiums in all of the races.
Austrians are really such a strong program in building. Obviously, Stoicola winning the overall World Cup title being among the highlights.
Nico Glacia with the World Championship in the sprint last weekend.
Yeah.
David Glacia with 2 podiums in the 2 races. Now Ronnie Yeager, he's one of a handful of guys that was active when this World Cup was last held here in 2012. He finished 14th in that race through the Horseshoe.
These are just such a great set of corner combinations. Devil's Dyke corner, it seems like it's the longest corner in the world. It seems like you're riding it forever. It's just such a flowing, long, gentle, fast left-hander. Really cool.
The World Championships were held here in St.Moritz back in 2000.
Correct.
And I saw several crashes in that race. Fortunately, we haven't seen anything even remotely resembling a crash so far in this first day of competition. Pavel's hits against the wall were about the closest thing, right?
Yeah, I think, again, it's a different track every year. Sometimes it's a little bit more challenging, and I think this year they've done a good job and everything's flowing together really well. But it's not easy.
Good look at the profile of Ronnie Yeager, who also provides our sled camera shots at most of the tracks around the world, for which we appreciate. American Johnny Gustafson's had a couple of podiums this year in the Nations Cup qualifying races, including a 2nd place yesterday. Also quick at the start. Let's see how this start time shapes up. 2nd fastest behind his teammate Tucker West.
Oh, 100th off. It's a good start time for Johnny.
In this first run,
His feet might be up a little high on the sled. He's a little too straight, maybe. But what a great start for Johnny.
4 races, 3 top 20s, including a best of 15th in Sigulda, Latvia. But he's skidding and doing some steering for sure heading into Horseshoe.
Yeah, he had an issue being offline coming out of Sunny, which gave him problems in the Nash-Dixon combination.
This is a track where you can make up time down at the bottom, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. Doing some minor adjustments going into Martin now.
It just is such a long track. 7th place finish time for the American, 1:07 plus. Not far from here, there's I think it's a 7-mile long sledding track that I've been on, where you start in one town and you wind through the woods, you end up in another town, you take the train back as many times as you can do it in a day. So they're used to their long courses here.
Yeah, definitely. So that was exit of Sunny into these little Nash-Dixon touch corner. Johnny's got to be disappointed, but he's got a 2nd run and he's going to do his best on that one.
It's Germany leading over the USA and Austria midway through run number 1 here, and we continue now with the seeded group. Or actually, did Bowman? Yeah, Bowman won the qualifying yesterday. He's the last of the Nations Cuppers. Also had an impressive 11th place finish last week at his first World Championship. He's a 2-time junior.
I would not be surprised to see more of this guy in the future.
Big athlete. As I said, they come in all shapes, sizes, and sled setups in the German program.
Yeah, and he's wide, too. I mean, when you see him coming in a straightaway shot like that, you can really see how wide his shoulders are.
Through Sunny now. And
Big
the
dude.
Nash and Dixon combination. For the big dude who hits a wall, and when you're a big dude and you hit a wall, the wall feels it. I don't think it's the run he envisioned.
No, just slightly offline in a couple of spots. But only 1200ths behind. It's not impossible or inconceivable that he could go into the green.
21 years old. He turned 21 1 month ago exactly. To the finish, the second of the 5 Germans in second place, 108.058. So Germany holding the top 2 positions ahead of the United States. 18 of the 32 sleds have come down.
Saw his head coach, Norbert, indicating where he saw the problem. This is coming out of the first or second kick.
Busy time here in St. Moritz, Switzerland, as we move into the seeded group. Kevin Fischnaller will be the first to come from Italy. 2 weeks ago, they had the IBSF events here, bobsled and skeleton. Next week, right after this World Cup, it will be the World Championships in para bobsleigh, which unfortunately did not get the inclusion. The announcement was just made for the 2026 Olympic Games. Too bad, because it's been a developing, growing program. Fischnaller in the red here.
Yeah, we saw Kevin settle into his sled, and I really liked his start curve, but then had to make some little adjustments in the straightaways out of the kicks.
2 weeks ago, Kevin Fischnaller clinched a tie for the overall World Cup championship, tied with Felix Locke in the sprint events. That was a shining moment for this Italian, who has competed most of the last several years in the shadow of his cousin Dominic.
Yeah, it really has been a good year for him.
Top 10s in both the World Championship races, sprint and classic, last week in Königssee. To the finish, Kevin Fischnaller is in 3rd place, behind Bowman, ahead of Master Sebastian Blay, continuing to lead for Germany.
I'm a little surprised to see that he wasn't faster, to be honest. I thought that he would have been, maybe 0.3 faster.
Yeah, he generates speed usually at the bottom. Great look now at the tall horseshoe curve. All right, plugging along here. Run number 1. And next up we have Alexander Gorbachevic. 13th place last week, the World Championship. It was a bit of a drop off from his 8th former year, the previous year, or rather, at the 2020 Worlds.
Strange year for the Russian team.
Really is. Demchenko, Victoria had 1 or 2 good races. Tatiana Ivanova has been steady but not solid as in years past. But she does have 2 race victories. That's about it. But lest we forget Roman Repelov.
Sure.
He's kind of slogging along most of the season until last weekend's World Championship, successfully defending his title.
Yeah, that was amazing. Just seemingly out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere. I mean,
he's so good.
He's so good, and he looks so good on the sled. But just rose to the occasion. That's probably a more fair way of saying it.
Gorbachevic 1300ths off the pace of the German at the last split time. So these 2 stop tracks or clocks pretty quickly, one after the other, and then not another one until the finish.
Looks like Sebastian had a nice run.
No question about it, as he continues to hang on to the lead by a full 10th over the rest of the field.
We have a new second place.
Gordy, we talk about luge, skeleton, bobsleigh, parabob, but by far the most popular sport on this track are the tourist rides. This is sort of the European home of tourist rides.
Yeah, they go from the top too. I mean, it's no joke. This is a full-on 80+ mile an hour bomb down from the top.
And what's great about it, as we get ready for Wolfgang Kindl of Austria, is that some of the drivers, the regular drivers of those tourist rides, are past Olympians. Ray Delgerci and Marcel Rona. they stay involved by giving the tourist rides down. So it's nice to know you're in good hands.
Yeah, with a lot of runs under their belt, no doubt, down this track.
All right, Wolfe gives away some at the start, but this was, all things considered, a pretty decent start time for the 2019 World Champion. And look for him, if he can be clean, he should move into the green.
Yeah, he was fast in training all week. So I think, you know, he's one to watch. Dropping back a bit here, but I suspect that if he's going to make time, it's going to be down at the bottom where aerodynamics are really going to be his strength.
It all begins with this shot out of Horseshoe, and he's within 800s. Now we'll see how it's moving.
And here we
500's going to be very tight.
Yep, I think he might gain some time here. Doing a little bit of driving on the straightaways, which you don't generally like to see. A little bit of skid and Gunter Sachs.
That was an incredible maneuver, that quick flick of the right foot. No, he can't quite do it. And you don't want to say runs out of track, or he could use a couple of more curves on this track, because there are enough curves as it is.
Yeah, he just got a little bit offline in the bottom section of the course, and it was enough to scrub that momentum that he had built. You could see the clock was moving in his favor. He was starting to gain on the German, and just scrubbed it away with some minor mistakes.
Tomorrow morning, it's the women's singles competition, and that's the only World Cup test still alive as we get ready for the Phantom Luge. Yes, there he is, on course already. This is the first of the Latvians, Riks Rositis. All of the Latvians in the seeded group here, Bergens and Darznieks to follow. And the point I was going to make is Natalie Geisenberger, Julia Tobitz, they still have to decide the women's world title, the World Cup title. Men's singles and doubles already decided.
We talk about the feet being the first thing that the wind sees. And Riks needs to work on pointing his toes just a little bit more. These Latvian sleds, seems like they tend to have your feet a little bit wider apart than some of the other nations, but I think that's exacerbating his toe point and making it a little bit worse here.
Riks has been pretty consistent all year long, and by consistent I mean places between 10th and 15th in the World Cup races. So he'll spend the summer trying to make those subtle differences to move up 2, 3, 4 spots in the standings week in and week out. He's way back in 13th right now.
He dropped his feet between Martinau and Portigo, which are the two final corners, and that's going right into an uphill section. Here's the start. We didn't get to see as they were going out of replay.
That was nice of them to give us that look.
Yes.
They run them along pretty quickly here simply because it's such a long track. You've got TV schedules to deal with. Now we make our way to the newest world champion in the sport of luge, Nico Glacia, who last weekend captured gold in the sprint competition. 21 down, 11 still to come here. 23-year-old Glacia on course.
Getting some encouragement from his coaches. Yelling and screaming. It's becoming more and more the norm these days.
It's the bobsled and baseball and football approach, and not the golf and tennis approach.
Yeah, it seems like we're evolving away from golf and more towards the yelling and screaming sports, which I think is kind of nice.
It adds electricity. Probably, you would know as an athlete, probably doesn't affect you one way or the other if you're on course, right?
As long as you know it's coming and you're used to it, it makes no difference.
Or the person doesn't say, wait up, just as you're starting, right?
Yeah. Nice looking run here from Glacia.
Opening it up at 1300s. Could bode well for the Austrians today. Wolfie Kindle found a lot of time down at the bottom as well, as Glacia should have the lead here. Good speed, 85 miles per hour, nearly 86 miles per hour. Wow,
Yeah,
107.545. So that speed was about a half a mile per hour faster than anyone. It's Austria, Germany, Austria, Russia, Germany, the top 5 right now, with 10 still to come.
We were discussing speed and whether or not it's a definite indicator or just a guide as to whether or not a sled is actually moving quickly. I'm talking about the speed trap, of course. But you know, I think in this case that's legit.
Arturs Darznieks for Latvia. Earlier this season was on the podium on his home track after run number 1, 3rd place, and just slightly fell off in run number 2 for a career best 4th place finish.
That's exciting.
27 years old.
It's so quiet. It's so different. You know, it's just as opposed to running on the artificially refrigerated courses, this natural ice just soaks up all of the sound.
I've got to believe this is a first ever competition on this track for Arturs. Yeah, that telephone curve right after Horseshoe. It's amazing how quickly that comes, but there haven't been many incidents there, problems there today.
Definitely more of an issue for the double sleds this morning because they're just not carrying enough speed to drive the proper line. It is a quick transition. I mean, you've got to be really fast with your rolls through there, and if you're off, it'll really affect the next probably four to six corners.
Arturs in 3rd place. It's good to see, even though not every sled's taking over the lead here, the track is still quick. The best in the world are still to come. And we'll check out this replay of the one Latvian, but it's going to be pretty exciting here, just setting things up for our next competitor, Gordy. It's Jens Bergens, who not only is the defending youth Olympic gold medalist, he won that title last year on this track, but he was fast all week in training. He may have been the fastest yesterday among the seated group training. And we already saw today what young Latvians are capable of doing on this track with the doubles victory.
Yeah, this is going to be fun to watch.
Now the 18-year-old settles into the sled.
I wonder if he's placing undue pressure on himself, thinking about results, or if he's just able to focus at such a young age. It's hard to respond to these pressure situations with consistency, and that's really the mark of someone who's got a future in the sport, is someone who can get through those situations at an early age. It's definitely a good sign.
Around the not-so-sunny curve, he has a tap in Nash or Dixon. And now the Horseshoe. Let's see what his deficiency is here, a 1/10 of a second. Can that be made up, Gordy?
It's possible. If he can do all the things he needs to do here, be smooth, stay on line, hold position.
He's lost a lot.
Yeah, I think that tap is catching up with him.
Unfortunate, because another bit of a foot tap, skidding all over the place. He looked solid all week long. So the young Latvian celebration is going to be reserved to the doubles team on this day, as Jens Bergens cannot recapture the magic he had last winter on this St.Moritz track.
He's so young. He's got a lot of years in front of him. And the fact that the speed is there is a huge sign of encouragement. You know, he can't let this one wall tap get him down. He's got a lot of great races in front of him, especially with such a strong program nationally for the Latvian team.
Competition continuing now with Jonas Müller, the next up for Austria. Ken tweets in saying he desperately wants them to put the telephone back at the telephone curve, because if you're going to keep the historic name you at least should commemorate it. And what he's referring to, that the reason that curve out of Horseshoe is called telephone is they used to, years past, they put the first telephone on the track right there, presumably to alert the medics when there was an incident out of Horseshoe.
Nice start time for Mueller.
Like his teammate Glacia, Mueller, a world champion in his own right, capturing his first ever podium with gold at the Worlds in the sprint competition. That was in 2019.
Winterberg.
That's right.
Yeah, exciting race.
23-year-old. He's from Bludenz, Austria. We were talking about Bludenz earlier in the doubles race near Imst. Actually, not far from here, as close to Switzerland as you can get in Austria.
Little tap of the wall. It's going to cost him 3/10 back. This is shaping up to be an interesting order so far.
It's been a very up and down seesaw season for Jonas Mueller. Just if you look at his last results, he had a 6th, then he had a crash, then a 2nd, and then he had a crash. He does have 3 podiums on the season, 5 top 5s. It's all about consistency. I mean, once he's got that, he will be a top 3 World Cupper in the points.
For sure. Consistency is so hard to get, though. I mean, there's so many factors and so many things to think about.
Johannes Ludwig. No coaches sitting with the athletes. In a normal year, you'll see a coach give a final pat on the back, grab the jacket. But of course, with the distancing that's necessary during this pandemic, the athletes are out there all alone. Ludwig, 34 years old, Olympic bronze medalist, conservative 3 paddles, a quick settle.
And a little bit of a drift off to the right. 6,000.
4th fastest start time, but faster than the current leader, Glacia.
Yes. Good position. Building a little bit of time. There's really not much you can do in these first 4 corners. It's really just letting the sled run and focusing on position. The driving really starts once you hit sunny.
Johannes Ludwig was on the podium the last time there was a World Cup here back in 2012. He finished 3rd as part of a Germany 1, 3, 4, 5, I believe they finished. Or 1, 2, 3, 5. Something like that. They may have even swept the top 4 spots.
Wow.
Felix Locke, Andy Langenhan, David Moller, I think, was on the podium that day.
Some problems for Ludwig.
Wow, and were there
yeah,
there
were big problems. Definitely big problems.
I'm spouting his credentials from 9 years ago, and we got to get in the moment here.
Yeah, there were some walls. I think it might have been at a tree.
World champion 2021 from Russia.
Here's upper course here. And here's where the problem started.
Riding high, yes, the hard hit.
Yep.
Good catch. Well, Johannes will be excited to get back to Oberhof, to his wife and children, and regroup for the next Olympic season. Now the 2-time defending World Cup, or World Champion rather. It's Roman Repelov. He's also the 2020 World Cup overall champ. He's been fast this week in training on lines he's learned from his younger brother Pavel. Alongside that World Championship, Repelov's only had 1 podium this year on the World Cup, a 2nd place, also in Königsegg, right after New Year's.
And he got the medals at the track where it mattered this year.
The event where it mattered too.
Yeah.
Well, he's close here, 200ths behind Glacia, one world champion from last week trying to hunt down another in men's singles. Now 800ths.
Dropping back.
If this were a Latvian sled, I would think maybe he'd move into the green, but the Russians have not been impressing us with the speed of the equipment down below today.
Little right wall coming out of Gunter Sachs. Wow.
Wow, Glacia's got a huge lead, Gordy. I mean, things are incredibly tight right now. Second, third, and fourth, separated by just 300ths of a second. But they're all trailing roughly a quarter of a second behind Nico Glacia.
Yeah, Glacia really did a great job of letting the sled run, and the Austrians have made some great aerodynamic advances as well. If you just look at their sled, there's all kinds of neat little tricks that they've done to improve their speed this year. You know, that's using computer-aided design and wind tunnels. There's a lot going on.
Now Dominic Fischnaller, who had a very uncharacteristic Dominic crash in the World Championship race in Königssee. He did finish 5th in the sprint competition the day before and still sits in the top 4 in the World Cup standings. He will need a crash by Semen Pavlichenko, who's 3rd, for him to move into the top 3. But that's been known to happen.
Yeah. 2/10 back, though, at such an early point. I'm struggling to understand why he should be so far back. Going around, like I said before, Sunny is really where the driving starts, and he's already 2/10 back by that point.
Is it possible the track is slowing down? It seems as if I ask that every week.
Well, a little problem, a little skid.
Yeah, big skid. And again, that's not a Dominic type move.
No. That seems to be the crux of the track for these guys.
Fischnaller, a 6-time World Cup winner in his career for Italy. He's going to be way back in the standings here, 18th place. And this is going to be kind of interesting, Gordy, with the final 4, because the track is serving up nothing for these final few athletes at the moment.
No, it really isn't. This is a critical corner that really sets up after Horseshoe. You go into the Telephone, Shamrock, Devil's Dyke, Nameless, and the Tree Bridge transition seems to be one that's creating some issues for people.
Sebastian Blais was early to go, 13th starter, and he's still in the top 3. It's Nico Glacia of Austria leading over Russia's Rapilov and Blais. And now Semen Pavlichenko, the 2015 world champion, on course, fast paddles, and a quick settle. Let's see how low he can keep this head. As Jason Turnerman was mentioning, with the white background, the natural ice, it's a tough visual for these athletes.
Playing with the sled a little bit. Interesting, you mentioned the paddle cadence. You know, there's 2 different schools of thought on paddling. Some people think you should take long, deliberate paddles and really reach and get a full range of motion. Others will go for the shorter and higher frequency, like Pavlichenko just did.
Split time coming up out of Horseshoe here, and he is already 3/10 back. I gotta believe it's the track.
Yeah, it might be. It might be.
Does not bode well for Felix Locke and David Glacia, the Olympic champions, coming up next. Max Langenhan will be the last to go. But here is Semen Pavlichenko.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim. I think the track is starting to go away. Oh, feet down between Martineau and Portigo. Wow.
That's the 2nd consecutive 18th place time we've seen. And just as a point of comparison, Gordy, going late in this event, Ludwig, Mueller, Pavlichenko, Fischnaller, they're all behind the likes of Anton Dukas of the Ukraine,
right,
and versions of Latvia.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tim. I think this track is going away.
Well, Felix Locke had the same misfortune. He's coming up next. He had the same misfortune earlier this year in Altenburg. where he went late and ended up back in 17th or 18th, and he got off the sled smiling because he knew that he might actually be in a good start position for run number 2. So that could be the case with all of these guys. And now here is the World Cup champion. He clinched that title a few weeks ago. In effect, really 3 weeks ago. It's been such a dominating year for this 2-time Olympic champion.
Oh, what a season he's had. I think a couple of races ago we were talking about a dream season, and it really has been. So yeah, he's going back into the red in portions of track where he's really not doing a whole lot.
That's right. And he knows his track as well. Felix was saying that because the Swiss programs and the German programs have long been aligned, the Germans have actually had the opportunity to come to St.Moritz even when there aren't competitive years here and get some runs. Wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And let's take a close look.
2/10.
Yeah, a close look at Felix's face when he gets off. Of course, he's already World Cup champion. Nothing at stake here. But he wants to win another race.
Of course. And his position and lines through the lower portion were definitely solid.
3rd place. So that actually, I think that might give him an advantage. Because that shows he's beating the odds at the moment, right?
I would think. Unless there's something we're missing here, Tim. I just think that this track is going away. And that was a very solid run for Locke. So I think the track's just going away. And he is sitting pretty for run number 2.
He's more than a quarter of second back. Nico Glacia, the new world champion, he's opened up a big lead over everyone. But he'll be last to go, likely, in run number 2.
And the other thing that's interesting is that they've split up these training groups so much, it's hard to get a real read on who's doing what in training.
Locked through, and David Glacia now on course. 2 of them have captured the last 3 Olympic titles. Now, Glacia comes off a really brilliant weekend at the World Championships where he was on the podium in both the sprint and the classic 2-run races.
Not an ideal start. You saw him bobble and kind of paddle off to the left a little bit and settled back in. But this will be a good test of the conditions. If he can make up time, then we know we'll have a better indication of where the track is, but I don't know that he's going to be able to do it.
The only one that can turn up the refrigeration on this course is Mother Nature. And maybe that is happening as we move into the afternoon.
Yeah, he's going away now. 4/10.
It makes what Felix just did that much
really
more
does.
Remarkable.
It really does. And the mistake that he made at the top was big, but I don't know that it was 7, 8 tenths big.
David Glacia across the finish in 20th place. So just by his reaction, he knew there were problems. You know, so it's not just the track slowing down, because the athlete isn't so much aware of that as they are of the mistakes they've made, right?
Definitely. He definitely felt like, I'm sure, maybe there were other mistakes, but certainly the mistake at the start cost him.
It's basically Austria, Russia, and Germany on the leaderboard in the top 10 at the moment, with 1 sled remaining, 1 athlete coming up from Germany.
Slight wall there.
Now Max Langenhan, who earlier this season captured his first ever World Cup race. He won the sprint competition in Winterberg. Max, I'm not sure he can pull off the same magic that his teammate Locke just did.
And that would be a surprise for sure. 400's back already. And that to me is an indication that the track is definitely going away.
How did Felix manage that? Hockel knows. I mean, George Hockel's been on this track, so he probably knew exactly what to do to those runners.
And, not to take away anything from the entire field, Locke is definitely sliding
in his own world.
Yeah, I mean, Well, his lines have been really good. His position's been good on the sled this year. This is a solid run, though. Only 2/10 back at this point.
It
if he
could
can
be
hang
a
on.
top 10. Yeah,
Yeah, if he can hang on.
in fact, if he's in the top 10, I believe Germany, Austria, and Russia will hold all of the top 10 positions. He crosses in 7th place, 3,100s back. Right now, it's Nico Glacia and the rest of the world, as the Austrian has a huge lead. But then, Gordy, let's see, we've got about 2/10 separating places number 2 and place number 8.
Wow. Nice position. Letting the sled run as much as you possibly can. You can see him making some slight steers. Anytime you steer the sled, it is slowing it down, so that's something to keep in mind.
It will be interesting, run number 2. And how important will start order be? That's going to be, we don't know the answer. But it's that mystery that makes it fun, as Felix Locke congratulates his young teammate, Max Langenhan, an Olympic champion and a junior world champion. Look at it, Nico Glacia with a very substantial lead, all Russians, Austrians, and Germans. The one Latvian, though, Artur Starznieks, with a great showing. Fischnaller in 10th, Mazder looking for his best singles finish of the season. Tucker West also in the discussion in the top 15. And Gordy, what do you think? Do you think these guys that we normally see